In this video we're going to take a look at split toning a black and white picture, but before we do that we're going to have a look first of all at correcting an image. We're then going to convert it to black and white, then we'll have a look at some tips and tricks around split toning an image. Let's make a start. Going to come down to the shadow slider, going to move the shadow slider across to the right hand side. We're going to open up the shadow area. There it looks pretty good, and you can see there's a lot more detail now in the shadow area, but also look what it's done to the shadow of this tree on that rooftop. Let's come down to the highlights, going to move this across to the left hand side. Once again we're getting some nice definition there of the shadow area, so I'm going to leave it like this. Looking at the histogram, it is moving a little bit across to the left hand side, so let's bring it back to the center. Perhaps something like that looks pretty good. Let's add in some clarity as well. Like what that's doing for the definition around here. You can even see the teddy bears in the window, and if we just look at the histogram, seems to be a little bit of a gap in the whites, so let's move that over to that position. And let's have a look at the blacks. Nope, moving it back. So there it is, we have now got a full range of pixels. Now for the black and white, let's go down to the HSL, the color, and there is our black and white. Now Lightroom has done a pretty good job. These are the values that it's put in, but we can change, we can adjust it. For example, let's take a look at the reds. Now always make a quick mental note of that number. We have got -8. When we click on the slider, move it back and forth and see what it does. And you can see it's around this area here, in particular the gentleman's face and that handrail. And I'm going to take it to, you can see -8 is where we started. I am going to brighten it up slightly into this position here. Let's take a look at the oranges. We got -17s. Once again, it's the handrails. I'm going to leave that back where it was. In fact, I'm going to make it just a little bit darker like this. Yellows, and as we move the yellows, yes, we brighten up the leaves on the tree, so I'm going to leave that in this position. Greens, and you can see it's the grass over on the far left. It's also a little bit the leaves in the trees. I'm going to leave that here, and let's have a look at the aquas. And okay, not a lot happening, so parking it back roughly where it came from. Blues, we have got +8, and as I move this back and forth, you can see it's affecting the jacket of this person here. Now this person here, I very nearly cropped it out, or I thought perhaps I could just remove it in Photoshop. The more I looked at it, I thought no, the dog's looking around the corner, and it just seemed to add a little bit more to the story of the picture, so I decided to leave her in. Right, so there it is. That was with the blues, but looking at it, look what it also does to the menu board as well. I'm going to move it across to that area. Right, let's come to purples, and with purples, oh, it's a jacket again, so dropping it right the way down to the -100 just to darken it down. Magentas is the, what is magenta? Oh, it's the blanket on the back of the chair. So I'm going to move it into this area. Just want to balance it roughly with this jacket. Now there is our black and white image. Happy with that. Next, split toning. Clicking on the split toning. Incidentally, you may notice I'm using the solo mode. What is the solo mode? Well, it allows you to close up the panels as you're moving through them. I prefer this method rather than having all the panels open. To get your solo mode, simply right click over that little triangle. There it is there. It's half off the screen, but click on solo mode. You can see there it is with the solid. So when I click on the black and white, you can see there the basic tab, and it just saves you scrolling through everything. So I'm going to go back to my solo mode. Right, split toning. First things first, always add some saturation on these. I'm going to take it to the mid-30s. That's always a good start position. So go into 35. You can now see we have got red. If I click in the window, you'll notice we've got half a square here on 0. We have got half a square here. This would be 360. Now when we move this across, we're going to go right the way through the color range. We're going to come back to red. Let me show you what I mean. Coming to hue, we have got 0. Moving it across, we go into the yellows, we come into the greens, we go into the blues, the cyanotypes, we go into the purples, we go into the magentas, and we come back to the reds at 360. So there was our full journey. For this particular one, the color I have, or the tone I've got in mind, is sepia, and there it is there. Those are the figures I like to use. But incidentally, if you want to create a sepia tone picture, this is the place to do it, but don't use the highlights. Instead, just let me zero that. So we've now gone back to our black and white. Going to click in the window here. We're going to put in, what did I have? I had 50. Going to press tab on the keyboard. We're going to put in 35, and there is your sepia picture. When you look at older sepia images, the toning is all in the shadow areas, it's in the darker tones. The highlights, the whites are unaffected, and you can still see the whites in the picture. Incidentally, you can take the saturation up. You may like a sepia like that. Another tone I like to use is something like this. There, I always like using those as almost like a black and white image, or a monochrome image even. Right, let's get my words right. Let's bring this back to 35. Let's bring this back to 35 as well, or the mid-30s will do nicely. And there it is. Right, so we've got two sepias. Let's click on this. Let's move this across. I'm going to take it into, I think I'm going to go for a little bit of a greeny color with this. So there's our two start positions, shadows, highlights. In between we got the balance. Move it this direction, go into the shadows, we got more of the greens. Move it in this direction, we got more of the sepias. I'm going to back it up, and perhaps something like that there looks pretty good. Perhaps just playing with the saturations, something like that could work. Now if you like it, just come across the snapshots, clicking on the plus, clicking on the create. We've now created a snapshot which will allow us to experiment. And if I just click in the little window here, perhaps you might like to apply a preset of blue. Now the blue, that actually looks really good. I like the figures I've got there. We got 215, we got 50%, and you can see there it is there, the saturation on 50%. The hue there is on 215. I am going to leave it. I actually quite like that. And if I just move that down, I think that's a really nice blend. I think that creates a very nice split tone. So let's create a snapshot. We can now toggle back and forth between the two. We have got green and we have got blue, he says, clicking on it. I think I'm going to go with the blue. Right, now the important thing, you know me and my vignettes. I always apply vignettes to my picture. I think it's just a great way of holding the viewer's attention in on the main subject matter. Now one thing with a vignette, let's go to effects. It is, don't forget, we've got highlights, we have got shadows, and this is going to affect it. If I drop this down, if I start to bring it into this area here, look at the way we're getting more of those blue tones coming in. If I bring it back in this direction, notice the way we got more of those sepia tones. So you have to be a little bit aware of this. Now that could actually work quite nicely with the picture, but that bright area there I think is just a bit of a no-no. I don't particularly want to crop it because of that mill wheel, or millstone should I say. So bringing it into this direction here, just taking that down, I think works well round this part, darkening that down. Also then holding, it's not the brightest point. The brightest point is still here and round here. So this is still being held in. And there it is. That will do nicely, he says, looking around the picture. One final thing. The histogram seems to have gone back over again to the left hand side. So let's go back to the basic tab. Going to take the exposure across to the right hand side just a little bit more into that area there. There is our finished image. Go on and give it a try. I'm just going to press L on the keyboard. That'll dim down the background. I'm going to press L one more time. That will now darken down the background. There is our finished image. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. That way you'll get all new videos as they're being released. But until the next time, it's happy imaging and take care.